Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special dinosaur filled episode of Common Knowledge, a podcast about improving at Magic the Gathering's most affordable format, Pauper. I am your guide, Kyle Novus, here to ferry you through the vampire infested forests of Ixalan. Joining me today is my ever intrepid ally, Mason Clark. How are you doing today, Mason?
It's been a long day, but I'm here to talk some Ixalan.
Awesome. Glad to hear. And guess what? Ixalan has pirates. That's right. Pirates.
Yesterday was Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Really? That's very special, and I feel like that's very, very fitting. Well, if only it could have been yesterday.
Yeah, Hearthstone gave me 100 gold for it.
Oh, yeah, that's actually really, really awesome.
Yeah, and all the characters talked like pirates too. It was pretty awesome.
I love it when companies do little things like that.
Yeah.
Well, this company did something fantastic because the company that I want to tell you about, Legit MTG, offers free shipping on any order $2 or more. So if you're looking for singles from Ixalan, if you're looking even to buy booster packs, you can get that there. Please check out Legit MTG, not only for their products, but also because you can find excellent content from creators like myself and other individuals just like you on there, posted pretty frequently.
That was a hot transition. That was good. That's too spicy for me.
Like that. Too spicy. The transitions are very, very spicy here. So, as you might have guessed from all of the mention of dinosaurs and pirates and vampires,
There's not a single dinosaur in my top 10.
I think I have one or two.
I'm just gonna be real with the people. I don't think
I'm super excited to be here today because we are going to be talking about the newest set that is going to be released for Magic the Gathering, Ixalan, and how that is going to impact Pauper. Now, Mason, I have to tell you, if somebody ever told me that there were going to be vampires, dinosaurs, pirates,
Yep.
and merfolk, as well as knights, all in the same set,
And
I would have thought they were
conquistadors.
crazy.
I agree.
Like, this is crazy.
They really are playing up the whole tribal thing and like doing not so I was going to say an Ixalanish world, but Aztec world. It's pretty cool because merfolks are part of the Aztec lore, right? Like IRL, like in real life they had like fish people.
I'm not very well acquainted with Aztec religion.
Your Aztec game isn't on point.
No, my Aztec game is not on point.
It's like my selfie game. Let's move on.
Okay, fair enough. So, the best way that we decided that we could go over this topic, because we didn't want to go through each individual comment, because A, that would take forever, and a lot of it would be unexciting. We decided that instead we would go over the top 10 that Mason and I each came up with on our own. And we've seen each other's lists at this point, I'll be honest with you. But we thought that we would present each of our lists to you guys so that we can discuss it and kind of decide together what cards are going to be the movers and shakers from Ixalan in the Pauper format.
Yep. I'm excited to talk about it. Do you want to hop right into it, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm ready.
By all means, take the lead. Steer this ship.
Which one of us is going first on this? I do not have the...
My captain. You got it. Do you have your list pulled up?
I do have my list pulled up. We are going in ascending order, correct?
Yeah, 10 first, 10 all the way to 1.
All right, then. So, I'm going to be going first, and the first card that I picked, this is my number 10, is New Horizons. New Horizons is 2 and a green. It's an enchantment and an aura. You enchant a land. When New Horizons enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Enchanted land has tap to add 2 mana of any one color to your mana pool. So, the reason that I put this at number 10, I can see it being usable in kind of certain scenarios. I see this working with enchanting your forest, having an arbor elf or a similar effect in play, and getting a +1/+1 counter on top of getting some mana fixing and ramping. So I think it's a decent card, and I think that this is pretty cool that it has that +1/+1 counter effect on it because it can make a creature obviously a little bit stronger. Um, but it wasn't really a standout like this is going to be the must-have of the set. Uh, so, Mason, with this, do you see any uses outside of kind of what I just mentioned there?
Um, no, not a whole lot. It's just the interaction with this and cards like Arbor Elf, where it's untapped target forest or untapped target land, can produce some pretty interesting decks. Interesting decks normally, and it's just nice for Enchantress style decks. I do not think there's a common Enchantress yet in Pauper. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
There are some decks. They're very, very much on the fringe. It doesn't have a great
They don't have
win condition.
they don't have a card though that when you play an enchantment you draw a card yet. Correct.
No, no, we do not have
Okay,
that.
yeah. So that's the biggest thing that's missing in my mind from the. I was gonna say like I spent a little time researching. I hope I didn't miss it. But when they get that kind of card, these kind of cards are gonna go up in value a lot. So it's also on my list somewhere, and we'll get to it then when we talk about it. But that's why I kind of earmarked it as well. Is it looks like a card that could have potential, and the +1/+1 will be nice to make those things bigger and get out of range. And the interaction with cards like Dryad Arbors. I'm sorry, not Dryad Arbor. Arbor Elf. Long day. It's very helpful. So you're able to really ramp some mana because if you put a bunch of these enchantments on a land that make extra mana, it makes it very easy to just turbo out big stuff. So
Yeah, we have already decks in the format that do that. They aren't typically seeing a lot of play. They typically like ramp into I think it's Auric Herd or something like that. And it's a pretty effective deck. I've played against it. It's really, really cool. But they aren't too common.
yeah, well, hopefully they'll become more common when they get their common enchantress in 3 sets. Shot called.
Okay, okay. We're gonna place that bet right now, writing it down.
Yep. Do you know what
And
I don't place bets on?
what?
Modal cards not seeing play. So my 10th card is Crushing Canopy. It's 2 and a green instant. Choose one. Destroy target creature with flying, or destroy target enchantment. So this card's pretty interesting because while neither half is something I'm super excited to play against, just being aware that this kind of card's in the format is something that's helpful. If there's ever a deck that leans on enchantments and flyers, it's something you're going to want to look at in your sideboard if you're having trouble against that deck. So this kind of card is just very powerful, and I think I lost Kyle because he's not moving. We lost Kyle. Cool. Well, these kind of cards are very powerful and interesting, and we're going to go on break real quick while we wait for Kyle to come back. All right, so
Okay.
sorry about that. We had a little bit of an issue with Kyle's internet. It seems like there were some conquistadors invading him, and he had to run away for a
At this
second.
point, I am almost certain that our internet has to be Comcast. Like,
I wouldn't put it past him.
it's confirmed.
Yeah, Comcast is the worst. But basically, I was just saying how while this card isn't incredibly powerful, Kyle, that the fact that it kills flyers and can hit enchantments, if there's ever a deck that focuses on those two things, or there's decks that are like, for example, Delver and maybe the Enchantress deck we talked about a second ago that could potentially come down the line, it's a card that I don't think we'll see play immediately, but it's important to know Because if you're having fun with those kind of decks, having a card that hits both of them in your sideboard, even if it's slightly overcosted, is powerful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that I actually have this card on my list as well, so
Hmm.
I'll give a little bit of my thoughts and opinions now on it, though. I totally agree that I think that it's something that could definitely see more play down the line, but I think it's a good option even now if you are looking at decks like Delver decks, they play a lot of flyers. If you're really looking for something or you're tight on sideboard spots and you need something to hit both Delver and enchantments, then this could be a potential card that you end up throwing into your sideboard.
Yep, definitely. You want to move on to your number 9?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my number 9, I have Fire Cannon Blast. It's one and double red. Um, it's a sorcery, to be clear. Uh, Fire Cannon Blast deals 3 damage to target creature. And it has Raid, which is a new effect in Ixalan. And its raid ability, Fire Cannon deals 6 damage to that creature instead if you attacked with a creature this turn. So the reason that I ended up putting this at my number 9 is that it's extraordinarily situational, but I think that this can kind of help fix a problem that like Red Deck Wins has, where a creature just ends up stonewalling you out of the game just because it has too much toughness for you to deal with some of your burn spells. It isn't a very common thing that's going to happen because you do have a lot of effects that make it so creatures can't block, things like that. But um, if you're looking for a way to get through stuff like that, I could see this seeing a little bit of play. It is certainly a stretch. My 7 through 10 are all cards that I kind of consider very situational,
Hmm.
very what's the word I'm looking for?
Corner.
Yeah, yeah, they're kind of corner. They aren't I'm not sure how I feel about them. They're okay. They're kind of borderline, but I think that this could see some play if burn not burn, but red deck win decks are looking for a way to get rid of bigger creatures.
Mm, I could see that. Yep, I think the card's fine. I don't think, like you said, something to write home about. Not like our number 1.
Not like our number one.
But you know what? I hate to demystify that card, but I don't have a lot to say on it. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Nah, I'm good on Fire Cannon Blast.
Yeah. So my number 9 is Demystify, which is white, instant speed, destroy target enchantment. There are already cards in the format that exile enchantment for a similar cost. I mean, it's exactly the same. So this isn't better than those. But once again, if there's ever a deck that like you need to answer enchantments for and you need like 5 of them for some reason or whatever, it's just important to know these kind of things. And like Kyle said, like there aren't a whole lot of cards in this set that scream super playable to me. So I had to pick cards that kind of corner Casey and could maybe see play like in sideboards and stuff like that. So I put Demystify on the list because it's just a card that you should be aware of.
Yeah.
I can't think of a reason where Exile would be worse than Destroy, but it could come up one day.
Yeah, at some point.
Yep. All right. What's your number 7 or your number 8?
My number 8 is we're actually revisiting Crushing Canopy surprisingly quickly. Same things that I said before. It's a modal card, so that's very good. Sideboard kind of option for um, tight sideboard when you're trying to fill in those last slots and hit as many things as possible, even if it is a little overcosted. It could see some play.
Yep, I agree.
So, yep. So let's not beat a dead horse there. Why don't you give us your number 7, Mason?
Uh, you mean my number 8?
Oh, your number 8. I
Yeah,
apologize.
you're fine. You're fine. Don't worry, that vanished. Much like the week, vanish of the week is 2 and a black instant. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less. We've had cards like this in the past, but having just another one is something to be aware of. If it once again that format ever gets into a place where you just need a bunch of these effects, then having more of these effects will be nice because sometimes you do want a 5th through 8th copy or even a 9th copy of a card. Sometimes in corner cases. So. Just something I wanted to point out and put on the list for that reason. And after that, my cards get a little bit more real now that we're done with the chaff of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you basically said everything that I have to say about Vanquish the Week. So why don't I move on to my number 7? Now
All
I
right.
got my numbers right, correct?
Correct. We're on 7.
Okay. So my number seven is Blinding Fog. Now, Blinding Fog is, well, let me read it to you first. It's two and a green. It's an instant. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures this turn. Creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. So I thought that this card was pretty interesting. I have it on my list simply because it is such an interesting effect. It's not doing anything crazy, it's just preventing damage to your creatures and giving them hexproof, but it does prevent a lot of things. By preventing damage to your creatures, you can prevent something like Electrickery taking you out, or um, something like Pestilence if Inkar's Justice, but it also has hexproof, so it can prevent targeted removal. So I can see this in some go wide strategies, as well as decks that are looking to kind of have an option that hits everything. I could see this if someone's building Infect. This might be an option as like a one of somewhere, because it is going to prevent those effects like Electrickery from completely wiping you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's an interesting card. I kind of wish it was in other colors, but I get that that's green's whole thing. So, yeah, if you ever have some sort of creature based deck or like creature combo deck, this is a nice way to protect it post board as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
All right.
So, why don't we move on to your number seven? What do you got going?
My list is really starting to blossom with Blossom Dryad here. It's two and a green, creature Dryad, tap, untap target land. So it's just another Arbor Elf type card where you can untap land so you can stack all the enchantments. It's just having another one of these can open up doors to certain types of decks. So I just kind of wanted to mention it for that reason. Something too thrilling for that I was thinking about at least that I could do with it right now, but having another one of these is something that I'm interested in, especially since you can power them out quicker with the first one, like Arbor Elf.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this card is really, really cool because it does couple with a card that I mentioned earlier, New Horizons. Here's an example of one of those effects that you could go ahead and use that card with. Um, there are other cards that do similar things throughout Pauper, but having an extra one certainly isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, definitely. We move
All
on to
right.
your number six.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming in number six is Prosperous Pirates. Prosperous Pirates is four and a blue. It is a creature. It's a human pirate, so we're finally onto some of that spicy pirate kind of action.
Mm-hmm.
When Prosperous Pirates enters the battlefield, create two colorless treasure artifact tokens with tap to sacrifice this artifact. Add one mana of any color to your mana pool, and it is a 3/4. Now, the reason that I have this in my list at all is actually the existence of familiar combo decks. I saw some conversation about this card possibly being used in them as another option for completing their combo. Um, and the way that this combo works, it's kind of batty because it uses familiar cards that reduce the cost of spells that are blue, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
like Sunscape Familiar and so on. Um, and by doing this, they're able to loop an effect that allows them to continuously play more creatures and just basically play the same creature over and over and killing you or locking you out of the game with that effect if they're using something like Stonehorn Dignitary. It's a very slow and painful death, and it really sucks to sit through. The problem with this card is that it does require two familiars to be in play in order to complete the combo. So uh, it's not necessarily the best option in that deck, but I saw people mentioning that this might be an option and worth exploration just to give you another combo piece.
That makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it in that style of deck, so that's very interesting to me. And it makes sense to everything you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I like this card. I think that it has some possibility. I'm not a big person on familiar combo decks, so I will leave the brewing on this to those more so inclined.
Those more familiar.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
So why don't you get us familiar with your number 6?
Nothing new on this horizon. It's New Horizon. We already talked about this
Okay.
card earlier. I kind of expressed my thoughts on it already because I forgot how low it was on the list. I thought it was my number 9. Turns out it wasn't. I put it right here. So yeah, we had talked about it earlier. I do think it's interesting, and that's all there is. I mean, also we can point out how there's dinosaurs like the Land Before Time, but
Gosh, Land Before Time. Dude, I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid. Like, this set is awesome just from that perspective.
yeah,
Finally getting to just attack with some dinosaurs is cool.
I was never big into dinosaurs and pirates when I was a kid. So to me, like, I get it, but I don't get it at the same time. But yeah,
Fair enough.
I do like the pirates because they're cool. So that's cool. And dinosaurs are big. I like big things.
But you weren't a dinosaur kid.
I
I
was
got it.
not. Yeah, yeah.
Well, for somebody that is a dinosaur person, my number 5 is actually pretty awesome. And also as a fan of pretty aggressive decks, I like this card. My number 5 is Nest Robber. Nest Robber is 1 and a red. It is a dinosaur creature with haste, and it is a 2/1.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I really like this card is because of its possibilities for specifically the deck red deck wins. Um, this deck has kind of fluctuated in the format quite a bit recently. I think it's pretty low in terms of its power rating recently, but um, typically you are running like 2 to 3 different 2 drops in that deck. Um, Rakdos Shred Freak is one of them. That's like a very uncommon one. Valley Dasher is almost always played, and there is a cohort. I forget what it is called right now. It's escaping me, but um, cohort and Valley Dasher are both 2 drop haste creatures. The cohort, it gets 1+1/+1 if you have a red creature in play, and Valley Dasher, it's 2/2, but it has to attack every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really see this card having the potential to replace Valley Dasher in a lot of cases, or giving you some other 2 drop options at least, and allowing you to really open up on the realm of 2 drops in that deck, which I think is, I like the deck. It's really, really cool. It tends to be very, very aggressive, and decks that are just too slow to interact with it um, can get steamrolled very, very quickly. So I think them having another really viable 2 drop is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't play a lot of red decks, but everything you're saying makes sense to me. So I could see we're having just another one. It's like we talked about before, just having the excess numbers of when you really want an effect is nice.
Yeah, exactly. We are kind of in the realm with this set of getting a lot of effects that are just repetitions. So if you ever wanted more of something, well, guess what? You got a lot more.
Exactly. I
So
agree. You are dead on that one. Some would say
I'm
you have a
glad you
dead
agree.
eye.
Ooh.
Yep.
So what is your number 5?
I won't torment them anymore. Deadeye Tormentor. It's 2 and a black. Raid. When Deadeye Tormentor enters the battlefield, if you attack with a creature this turn, target opponent discards a card. 2/2. So not the most exciting body, but we talked about Suicide Black last week with that set called Iconic Masters, and how it wasn't really a deck. But this card kind of goes into that deck. I kind of alluded to it last week, where it's just a way to like really get in there, and it could be a good sideboard card against combo decks, just to kind of keep them off their combo while still being aggressive. So you might want other types of effects normally, but this thing is like maybe just slightly worse than those, and still does your main game plan enough that you'd want to play it. So I put it on here for that reason, and it's a pirate.
And it's a pirate.
Arr.
That does give it points. So yeah, I definitely think that this card could see play in like a more aggressive black deck.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I said, I don't think that it's the best option. I think there are better things that you could be playing in its spot. But if you're looking to get a discard effect and trying to fight on that axis of the game and make that axis pertinent, then this card could be what you're looking for.
Yeah, and it doesn't do the discard thing great because your opponent chooses, but the fact
Mm-hmm.
that it's also a body, sometimes decks they board in too many non-proactive things, and this one is proactive while being a little bit worse. So it's like it's not a 10 ever, but it's like a solid 5 a lot of the time. So
Hmm.
does kind of works the game plan. What's
Yeah, if you
your
play this on curve or a little off curve, it's probably going to be pretty good.
yeah, agreed. All right, what's up with you, Kyle?
So for my number 4, finally, we're kind of getting into the cards that I am seriously excited about. Um, this one is Prying Blade. Prying Blade is a 1-drop artifact equipment. Uh, Equipped creature gets plus a 1/+0. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and the equipped cost is 2. So the first thing that I just have to point out with this card is you can get it with Trinket Mage. I think that's awesome. Anything that I can get with Trinket Mage that is at least somewhat relevant, I love. Um, Also, I think that this card really pairs well with another card that we're going to be talking about later. Um, any deck that wants to be utilizing equipments, this could work fairly well in, but it's going to be able to help trigger Metalcraft pretty quickly if you get an aggressive start while utilizing this card. Um, it's going to give you mana fixing on top of that. Uh, and it just gives you artifact count. There's enough things that we can utilize that have like improvise or affinity where this card is pretty good. Um, and I think that there's going to be a lot of possibilities utilizing this card in decks like Boros Monarch. Um, just being able to bounce like a treasure token rather than having to bounce something that you actually want to utilize, like having to bounce one of your lands, um, is pretty good. So I could see this seeing play. I think that there is going to be kind of a deck that we are going to be hypothetically talking about going forward. And I personally see this card fitting into that hypothetical deck. Um, but let's keep kind of moving forward so that we can get to that hypothetical deck and talk about it a little more in depth because I think that Mason and I are probably on the same page about this one.
Yeah, I have that card higher up, so I'll get to it later. I'm pretty
Okay.
desperate to talk about Desperate Castaways, though. That might take advantage of the card we just talked about, whose name I forget because I'm terrible. Prying Blade. It does work well with that one. But Desperate Castaway is 1 to black, creature, human, pirate. This creature cannot attack unless you control an artifact 2/3. So it's just kind of a big static body.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's not the deck that Kyle's thinking about, there could be a deck similar to it using different colors where they might want to play this card because of its big stats. It isn't the biggest thing in the world, but it is pretty good. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Just it's fine. Like, to be honest, there weren't a whole lot of cards in this set I was excited about, and really the top 3 are the only 3 cards that I think will see any chance of play, at least from my list.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I could be wrong. I'm
I
pretty.
think my top 4 have some possibility, but I do really like the card that you brought up. It almost made it onto my list. I was a little uncertain about it, but when I do think about it in the context of the deck that I'm thinking of hypothetically, because I could see this slotting in. Having a 2/3 body is never a bad thing. Something that is a little heavy on the toughness end can be pretty helpful. This isn't killed by a Vincar's Justice. Obviously, it's going to survive electricity. That's but it's pretty powerful. I think it's pretty hard to find a 2/3 body in black for 2 that isn't going to give you a downside. I was looking at it the other day, and this is the first one. Even though it does have conditions, it's not that hard to satisfy with the kinds of cards that you have
Vault
available to you
Scourge
in
does it.
Pauper.
I think there's also like a Suicide Black deck that probably wants to play, Bone Splitter and the best card and Iconic Masters Dark Steel Axe, and this card is
Yeah,
satisfied by Dark Steel
absolutely.
Axe.
Prying Blade even works pretty well with this.
Yep, Prying Blade
And
as well.
we'll talk about a few other cards that could work well with it
Mm-hmm.
later on. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, why don't we move on to my number 3 here? So my number 3, I thought that you had this on your list somewhere. It might be crazy. Uh, Costly Plunder.
Yeah, that's my number 3 as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we can just talk about it in one go then.
Yep.
So, Costly Plunder, it's one in a black, it's an instant. As an additional cost to cast Costly Plunder, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw two. So, this is just a strictly better Altar's Reap. And it's kind of great because there's a lot of synergies with like Chromatic Star and I think it's is it
Prying
Chromatic
Blade.
Lancer?
It will, yeah.
Oh, Terrarian, I'm meaning.
Yeah, it works with
Um,
Terrarian. It works with Prying Blade, like we just talked about.
mhm.
Works with just anything really. I mean, the fact it's an instant also means it works like as a removal spell because Alter Reap is. I'm sorry, as a counter to removal spell. So let's say we're playing like a Suicide Black deck that wants to play Desperate Castaway and stuff like that, and you played a Vault Scourge, right? So let's say you play turn 2 Castaway, turn 3 you play Vault Scourge, pay 2 life, and then you like move to
Mhm.
combat. They're like bolt your Vault Scourge. You're like, all right, well, I didn't want to do this now, but now I'll costly plunder, and you're not really down anything. So that's like
Yeah.
another aspect to the card, and the card is very exciting for those reasons. I like this and the next two cards we're gonna talk about. I think definitely will see play. There's no doubt in my mind, and yeah, you can keep talking about this card, but I think it's very very good.
Yeah, I think that this is very good as well. I think we're on the same page. I definitely feel like if you are playing against black decks, anytime in the near future, you're probably going to be seeing people experimenting with this card.
Yeah,
And I think it really opens up a lot of possibility, especially that artifact clause, because there are so many decks that already take advantage of drawing cards off of artifacts that this kind of just slots in perfectly and kind of gives you another color to explore with those decks.
yeah, yep. It This card's great. Like
So
the fact that you draw
why don't
two and you can like threaten card, like you can play like more, you can play a threaten deck with Alter Reaps as well. Like if you want to get a little janky and have some fun, you could play a bunch of threatens and you could play Alter Reap, Costly Plunder, and just like take their stuff, hit them, sack it, draw two. Like it's not going to be great by any means, but that's like a really fun deck to play. At least in my opinion. I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe,
I mean,
maybe I'm a sadist.
it's definitely an option.
Yep.
I think it's definitely an option now.
So what's your number two?
So my number two, I don't believe you had this anywhere on your list.
I don't
Uh,
think so either.
and let me tell you why you are completely wrong.
Sure.
Um, this card is Sun Crowned Hunter. Now, let me pull it up real
Oh, it's so good you can remember it. It's going to redefine Popper. Kappa Pride.
I
Wow.
really actually do think that this could really make a difference for one deck in particular and kind of color shifts it. So Sun Crowned Hunters is uh, four colorless and two red. It has Enrage. Whenever Sun-Crowned Hunter is dealt damage, it deals 3 damage to target opponent, and it is a 5/4. Now, I understand for all of you who think that I am very, very crazy, I understand that this is an expensive card. But
Yeah,
I
it's going to be
see
like a
this.
quarter or two.
I see this. No, shut up. I
That's more than my Popper deck.
right.
Yeah.
I see this card seeing play in. I'm actually going to be spending a lot of time brewing this deck because I think it's super sweet. Um, in red black pestilence builds. Um, because if you activate pestilence with this on the battlefield 3 times, that is a total of 12 damage to your opponent. So
Okay.
it might be kind of a dream world setup kind of scenario, but uh, I think that this card is really, really powerful, and that's a pretty quick finish. Within 2 turns, you can take your opponent out entirely just by activating Pestilence. Then,
Okay, that's
so
true. Hmm.
I think that
It's
if
not the worst
I were
idea.
to be, when I am going to be brewing with this, chances are I'm going to be taking a very, very red-black control kind of approach. The hardest thing is probably going to be getting life gain to work properly with this because the white black versions obviously have access to some pretty easy enter the battlefield life gain effects. Um, this is probably going to have to utilize some more drain kind of effects.
Yeah, I could see that.
But I think that there's brewing potential, and that is why this is my number 2. I very much think that you're going to be seeing people attempting to brew with this at the very least sometime over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Makes sense when you talk about it like that. I hadn't really thought about it with that card, so that is interesting. I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to.
can't. I
Sorry,
can't take credit for that at all. I have to thank Reddit. Reddit
never
pointed
heard
that
of it.
out to me, and as soon as I saw it, it was like, "Wow, this is fantastic."
What is read it? Is that what you said?
Yes, read it.
Read it. I've never heard of it. I don't read Magic cards. I'm a Magic player, so I'm definitely not going to some site where you have to read it.
Okay, fair enough. I don't blame you. Not everyone's a reader.
All right. Well, I don't want to pry too much into your personal life of what you read and what you don't read, but Prying Blade was my number 2.
Okay.
Kind of like Kyle had talked about it earlier in his number 4 slot. I think for decks I want to use like Plunder and the Pyre we talked about earlier. It could be good. It just you can play a little bit more expensive cards if there's a way to consistently get this card out. And like Kyle said, there's Trinket Mage. And when you get a couple of hits of this thing, it can really start to snowball, especially if you have good uses for the artifact. So it's kind of a little bit more speculative. It's probably true that Plunder will see more play than the Blade, but I wanted to take a little bit of a chance and put Blade higher than Plunder. And I think everything Kyle said earlier is true. But I really want to move on to number 1 because I was talking about number 1 last week. Like this is the card. this is the card that I was like super hyped for last week, and Kyle was like, I can't figure it out. I don't know what it is until after the show. Kyle.
Well, once you told me what it was like, oh, okay. I thought that I had missed something just spectacular, like
The entire world has.
crazy. But go ahead. I'll let you read it because I know you're super excited. I'll let you go first.
Oh man, you can't tell from my body language and my talking how excited I am for this card compared to the rest. Legion Conquistador. It's 2 and a white creature vampire soldier. When Legion Conquistador enters the battlefield, you may search your library for any number of cards named Legion Conquistador. Reveal them to your opponent. Put them in your hand. Shuffle your deck. So it is Squadron Hawk, but for vampire soldiers, and it's a 2/2 instead of a 1/1 of flying and 1 more mana. So it's more fair. But Kyle, there are so many things you can do with this card. It's so awesome. So first off, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are no other cards like this except Squadron Hawk, right? That are common?
There might be 1 or 2 others.
They're in different colors, but they maybe cost more.
Yeah, I forget exactly what it was. I think I've looked at it before.
All right, well,
they exist, then they're just not playable for one reason or another.
Right, well, this one's pretty cheap on mana, because obviously a 2/2 for 3 is not the most exciting thing in the world. But the effects that Squadron Hawk gives is part of the reason why Mind Sculptor decks and like the Blade decks, right, where Stoneblade were so good, because it allows you to abuse cards like Brainstorm and Jace's 0 ability and gives you strong effects for your shuffle. So what I want to do is I want to play a blue-white, I'm going to call it Trophy Blade. So instead of Stoneforge Mystic, we have Trophy Mage, which can search out our Bone Splinters. We might play the Prying Blade. I want to test it at least. And then our Darksteel Axes. So we can use those. We use Brainstorm, and we use the Conquistadors and the Squadron Hawks. And we start to take over the game. And I think Kyle's messaging me. I'm not sure. Maybe he's looking something up. We'll find out in a second with my phone beeps. But, yeah, I just want to play all those cards. I want to play Brainstorm. I want to play just cards that matter with shuffling and whatnot. And I just want to try and take over the game that way. And kind of a Koldatha, like how they try to get advantage by bouncing things and getting a lot of value. I want to do that, but just the blue-white shell. So I don't know if that's what you were thought about, but that's what I want to play. And obviously Darksteel Axe, perfect into this deck. It's Bone Splitter number 5. So
yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page as you. I was looking up. I'm like Trophy Mage. Wait, and I know you meant Trinket Mage.
Trinket Mage. Trophy Mage is uncommon, correct?
Yeah.
My bad. I meant Trinket Mage.
And I thought that I'd been missing out on something this whole time.
Oh, you were like, man, I could be playing with the better version.
Yeah, it's like, oh wait, did I miss something? But yeah, I'm definitely on the same page with you.
He disconnected. Comcast is out to get him. Do you know what this reminds me of? our great sponsor, Legit MTG. Legit MTG will never cut out on you. And I, unfortunately, will have to take a quick break while we wait for Kyle to come back and we can finish talking about Legion Conquistador. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that. So, Kyle, you were just talking about Legion Conquistador when you disconnected. What were you going to say, bud?
Yes, I was going to say that I think that you are spot on with the blue-white version of Legion Conquistador really being great. Being able to abuse Brainstorm is really kind of just going to be fantastic. Um, and
Same with Ponder, too. You get to, like, keep 2 off Ponder and reset on the 3rd. So,
yeah, yeah, I think that it's really cool having another option beyond just Squadron Hawk. Being able to effectively have 8 Squadron Hawk in your deck is just crazy. Um, and coupling that with different equipments like Bone Splitter, Prying Blade, Dark Steel Axe is really going to be very, very strong. I would like to, and you said that basically using the same draw core that Clodotha Boros uses. I would really like to attempt this also in white black. I think using Costly Plunder along with that kind of draw setup is
mm-hmm.
pretty cool. Problem is, it does really lose all of the um, brainstorm kind of synergies, which is really what makes these cards just oppressively powerful at times.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I see this card making an impact. I absolutely see people attempting this, tacking in on like Seeker of the Way, like we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that card could probably end up in this deck in some way, shape, or form, especially because you're going to be casting,
A lot
if
of
you're using that
cantrips.
Clodotha Boros core, those cantrips, things like that, you are going to be activating the prowess on that pretty frequently. And yeah, I really see this deck being a contender at some point in the near future. Like
Yeah.
this deck's going to be strong.
It's kind of crazy to me. Like, I don't know. So people might not understand to what we mean, like how we're going to use the brainstorm. So the thing about brainstorm is it gives you card selection, not card advantage traditionally. But what you do is you'll cast a brainstorm, draw your 3 cards, right? And then you have already cast the Squadron Hut or the Conquistador, and then you'll put 2 of those back. Then you'll play one and either redraw one or redraw both, depending on your hand size. And so then it actually makes them into draw spells because now there's no downside. So, and also you can put that, you can like, so sometimes you can do what's brainstorm locking yourself, where you have 2 bad cards on top. Now it's much easier just to cast a brainstorm, have a much higher chance to hit something that will reshuffle your deck, and then you've now really got some card selection. So I just thought it was good to kind of mention. Maybe some people haven't played with brainstorm before and they don't know what you're talking about because brainstorm is very complicated.
Yeah, it's not an easy effect by any stretch of the imagination, but that kind of combo right there, specifically utilizing Jace the Mind Sculptor, is what got basically that whole deck just dismantled.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that and
back
having some of the
when
best
that
cards
was in
ever.
standard.
Yeah.
So this is a pretty much known quantity, but it's insanely powerful because you just get so many threats so easily. And even if your opponent is going to be using things like Ivankar's Justice, it's still going to be hard to keep up with you. And you really have to two for one your opponent if they play something like Squadron Hawk or Legion Conquistador. Um,
Yeah,
if
it's
you're
worth
playing a one
mentioning.
for
Yeah.
one,
Sorry, continue.
if you play a one for one game at that point, you're just going to get drowned by card advantage. And having 8 copies of this card at your disposal in a deck, it just makes that even more important
Yep.
for your opponent.
It's worth noting that you don't like if you cast the first Conquistador, you don't have to grab 3 and move to discard. You can grab 1, you can grab 2. So you don't have to go all in immediately and stuff like that. So it's not like once you pull the trigger, you're stuck with them all in your hand. You get to kind of maneuver the game how you want to maneuver it, which is super relevant with the brainstorm and stuff like that. Because maybe you've already played your first Conquistador and you grab 2 from your deck, and so there's only 1 left. So you want to play 1, then not trigger it, and then play the next one and trigger it to get the shuffle. So, and especially against those decks like the blue-black control deck, where they're going to try and loop Evans cards, you can play a threat a turn. And with the deck we're suggesting, you're going to have a lot of equipment, so they're going to have to answer that threat each turn.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well,
absolutely.
I think that covers me on the Conquistador. I don't know about you.
Honestly, like this is a card that I could talk about for a really, really long time, just because I am so excited about it.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm also really excited to do?
Talk about the patrons.
Yes, I'm really excited to talk about our patrons that donate to us at patreon.com. If you go to patreon.com and search Common Knowledge, you can donate to this show and help support us so that we can make better content for you by improving our audio equipment or better internet. It's not really a possible thing for me right now. I'm kind of at the mercy of my college, but uh, it helps us to produce a better product so that you, the listener, the viewer, can consume a better product. So check us out at patreon.com/common knowledge. Also, we are parts of the Constructed Criticism Network, and at this point in time, it is, I think, an important thing for us to let you know that we have 2 other podcasts on our network. We have Constructed Criticism, which is the namesake podcast of our network. It goes over pretty much every constructed format. We handle Pauper, but if you're looking for information on standard, modern, even legacy, they are going to be talking about that and helping you to improve your game there. They also talk about different ways that you can improve on the how we play level, kind of about, I think my favorite example, and I will always use this example, is what to think of when you are traveling to a Grand Prix, and as well as how to deal with tilt, stuff like that. We also have our sister podcast, um, Limited Time Only. Limited Time Only handles the limited portion of the Magic Spectrum and talks about improving your limited game so that you can go ahead and win your next PPTQ or RPTQ in the limited format.
100%.
Cool. So I didn't miss anything. That's awesome.
You're good.
So the next part of our show is, and this might be a little short because we kind of went over some of our expectations already, and we did talk a little bit about how not everything that we went over was super exciting to us. But I was hoping that we could talk about, and Mason, I would like to kind of ask you this question, really. What do you see this doing to the Pauper format moving forward? How big of an impact is this set going to have? And I guess even for a broader spectrum view, I would like to ask you this paired with Iconic Masters. What kind of impact do you see this having?
So this set itself doesn't really have too much that's actually good. The Conquistadors and the Costly Plunder are the only ones that really, to my mind, will actually stick out. And then still, the Conquistadors might not. It might just be a slower Kuldotha, and the Costly Plunder might just be not good enough. Even though it's a powerful card, this might not line up well in the format. So I don't think a whole lot there. And then same with Iconic Masters. There are some cards that are really good and are interesting, but really only Call the Herd is the only one that's clear to me will stick out. I'm sorry, that sticks out to me that will help change the format. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I just don't think there's a whole lot that's interesting or powerful in the format. I do think the Conquistador deck has the elements to be. It just kind of will line up against the format.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know about
I
you.
I think that Legion Conquistador, Cawblade, whatever kind of build you want to call it, I think you called it Trophy Blade. You heard it first here, people. Um, does have the potential to line up well against the format. I think that it could really be the equipment deck that people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree that it could have issues here or there, and we are really going to have to wait and see. Of course, everything that we say here is conjecture. Um, so now onto my bold and rash statements. I think that the Conquistador deck is actually going to be a thing, personally. I think that it's going to be pretty darn good. Like, I could really see it making some moves, and if that's the case, uh, I think we are going to be seeing a shift towards even more mass removal. Um, Black decks running of Inkar's Justice, I think that's going to just be needed if you're playing that. Uh, and as well as just removal, like, what is it called? There's one that's an instant, it gives -2/-2 to a creature and all creatures that share a name. I think that could see a lot more play because of it.
Echoing Decay.
Echoing Decay. Thank you. Um, so the thing is, even though there are the cards to answer it, a lot of them are in black, and I still think that it's going to be interesting, regardless. So I guess we'll kind of see how it shakes out. I do see the Sun Crowned Hunter at least making a showing here or there as people attempt to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see it work. It is going to be very susceptible to removal as well, but any creature deck is going to be. So I see these two sets, and I mean, especially with Secret of the Way coming into the mix on
Mm-hmm.
top of this Conquistador deck, I really see uh, that deck making an impact. But uh, that's the end of Rash and Wild Conjectures by Kyle.
No, I think that's fair.
So I think that kind of wraps up what we were wanted to talk about in this episode. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with Ixalan, Mason? Anything concerning pirates, dinosaurs, merfolk, and more?
Not really. No, I think we covered everything I want to talk about at least.
Okay, fantastic. So, do you have any shout outs for us this week, Mason?
No. Do you?
At this point, it's not really a shout out in a positive way, it's a shout out in an angry way. Montclair University, if you're listening right now, improve your internet because it's really bothering me and making this a worse product. Uh, Thank you.
There you go.
It's been logged.
Yeah.
All right, so Mason, let's say that I wanted to talk to you about this Conquistador deck. If you were going to be creating a list where you might be posting it, things like that.
Uh,
Where could I find it?
you can send a sparrow to my house in Bellevue, Tennessee. If you want to get me a little bit more efficiently, you can always contact me at SOV Mason on Twitter or Mason Clark on Facebook.
Okay.
Kyle, if someone wants to get a hold of you and talk about Pestilence combo decks, where do they go?
You would inevitably end up going probably to the hospital because pestilence combo sounds like a terrible disease. But if you wanted to talk about magic pestilence combo, you could find me on Twitter. I am Kyle _Novus. You can also find me in the Constructed Criticism Facebook group. Uh, my name on Facebook is Kyle Novus. Very easy. There's several of us. You'll probably recognize me if you've watched this at all. If you're listening to it, I don't think I have any voice recordings attached to my Facebook profile. Otherwise, you can also find me on Twitch. I am Cursed Lono on Twitch. I have not been streaming very much lately. I intend to get back into that very soon, probably right after Ixalan drops, really. I've been adjusting to college recently, and so I haven't had as much time as I would like to devote to that. All right.
All right.
So I think that covers just about everything that we wanted to talk about this week. Um, Anything else, Mason?
Nope,
Did I miss
that's it.
anything?
Nope, I think
Okay,
that's everything.
fantastic. So, from the vampire-infested forests to the treasure-filled caves of Ixalan, and to the bottom of our boots and the timbers of our boats, we hope that you have a very Ixalan-filled week and enjoy. If you are going to, pre-releases are not this week; they're next week.
They're
Correct?
this week.
Oh, they're this week. Then please enjoy your pre-release. Tell us what you think is good, and if you think that we made a mistake and overlooked some card, please get in touch with either of us. We would love to hear from you. And with that, we bid you adieu.
Later.